Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast. I am Race for the Prize. Let's get ready for Bristol Trucks. This will be more of a homework session and not necessarily the typical succinct to the point picks video. This is more me going through the process. It's a little longer. If you like that, cool. If you're looking for picks, check back later this week. But before then, go to racefortheprize.com. That's where you get access to the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet. $27 for the month of March. Oh, but I didn't get Phoenix. You want to talk prorate? Send me a message. Let's get into it. We'll start the homework for Bristol by looking at last year's race. Simply looking at the results. We'll also look at track history for drivers. Corey Heim wins this race. He gets the lead at the end when Christian Eckes runs into lap traffic. It opens the door for Heim. Heim wins. Eckes may have had the better truck, just didn't play right at the end. So it goes. Lap traffic wasn't too hairy in this race, and I don't expect it to be. I expect the teams to get down to that bottom line and just turn circles, run laps. Very similar to just turning laps at Las Vegas. And I don't mind looking at the Las Vegas data, and we will look at that. Oh, we can't look at Las Vegas data to predict Bristol. Well, you can rewind the clock 5 months and trust data from 5 months ago with drivers in different trucks for different teams with different crew chiefs. Or you can rewind the clock 2 weeks ago and look at the driver with the same crew chief with the same truck. And they unloaded fast at Las Vegas and executed that race at Las Vegas. They're more than likely to unload fast at Bristol, which will be a lap turner, and then they'll likely be able to execute at Bristol. So I really don't mind. You can disagree with me all if you want, but if the trucks are fast at Las Vegas, why wouldn't they be fast at Bristol? If the driver executed at Las Vegas, why wouldn't they execute at Bristol? Yeah, it's a little bit different. There isn't a guarantee, but that's a data point that I can go with. Grant Engelfinger fast, worth noting. He was not with Cody Roval Racing last year. He was with GMS, but Cody Roval Racing, from what we've seen this season, is maybe better than what GMS was providing there at the end. Gallagher Motorsports had been pretty strong in the truck series, but last year was a little bit better of a year, but they weren't the powerhouse that we saw, 2020, 2021. And Cody Roval is allied with Bill McAnally, and McAnally really unloaded a lot of speed at Las Vegas. So I would say an upgrade. Different crew chief now with Stankiewicz. He had Jeff Hensley. Hensley's now with Taylor Gray. Taylor Gray finished 5th at Bristol last year. Rajah Caruth, running for GMS last year, finished 6th. Now with Spire. We've seen the speed that he has. We will go over that specific speed by looking at Las Vegas here in a second. And he was fast. I know a lot of people look at that Las Vegas race. Oh, well, it came down to pit road. Sure, it did. But you can look at his lap speeds and his lap times, and he was fast. He earned that victory. It wasn't necessarily just, he put himself in position to get the win. He was fast, folks. We'll go over that. Ben Rhodes, no surprise, gets a top 10. Typical Rhodes day, never really competing for the win, but there in the end. Chase Purdy, not bad in that race. He was not with Spire last year. He was not with Jason Trinchier. Trinchier was with Colleague Motorsports. Now down with Spire. He'll jump in the Spire car this week. That will be interesting to see how that works. Nick Sanchez finishes 9th. He gets a late race penalty. We'll go over that in a second. Jake Garcia, again, one of the problems with looking at last year's data for Bristol is we've got a lot of truck changes. Garcia was with Bill McAnally. He's now with Thor. Is that a step up? Is that a lateral step? Judging by the speed that McAnally unleashed this week or 2 weeks ago at Las Vegas, it may be a step back. Bailey Curry coming with a 13th place finish. He has a 15th place finish as well. Maybe this is a track that suits him, but the first race of the year did not go so hot for Bailey. And I'm considering Las Vegas the first race. I guess we could consider Atlanta or Daytona in this truck package, but By the way, he does have two top 15s. I do want to rewind and say, hey, look, Grant Enfinger has been really good at this track. Ben Rhodes has been pretty steady at this track. You look at Enfinger, for those listening to the audio version, last 7 years, 3rd, 4th, 2nd, 7th, 5th, 10th, 4th. Ben Rhodes, 7th, 18th, 9th, 14th, 8th, 7th, 5th. And if you go back, 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017, both of those drivers were 7 of those races, 7 of the 8 were top 10s. Those were all with Thor Sport back when Enfinger was still with Thor. Rhodes is still there. Connor Jones finished 15th. The young late model racer, if I'm not mistaken, now getting more of an opportunity with Thor. I believe his dad's got a little bit of cash. 15th last year. He'll be in the race this year again for Thor. Probably around 15th place car again. Matt Crafton finished 16th. We did see him run really well at Las Vegas. Something that surprised me. Something to keep my eyes on because I had pretty much written him off. If his car has speed, and we see the old Crafton in 2022 finished 5th, then 7th, 11th, 7th, 8th, 2nd, 16th last year, but wasn't his best season. Ty Majeski finishes 19th, but that's because he blows a tire late in stage 2. He was a possible race winner. He did win in 2022. Daniel Dye, 21st from McAnally. He had a bit of an issue at Las Vegas, probably deserved a better finish than he got, which surprised me a little bit. He was the one McAnally driver at Las Vegas that I wasn't as bullish on. We'll go back and look at that as well. Tyler Ankrum, not so good. These guys were not with McAnally last year. Just to let you know, he finishes 23rd, racing for Hattori. Hattori no longer in the picture. No surprise. Zane Smith, 24th. He has an issue late in the race at Bristol. He leads a bunch of laps by staying out during stage 2. But a penalty, I believe, is going to take him down. We'll get to that in a second. Anyone else worth noting? These are just your guys running in the back. Tanner Gray finishes 29th. Not his best day ever. Probably had a 17th place race car, but then also gets a penalty late in the race. Dean Thompson gets in a wreck. Now the drivers that didn't race last year but are on our board, obviously Kyle Busch. Unload your paycheck this week. Is that what we're going to have to do? Is Kyle Busch going to go out there and lead 200 laps? Is that what we're expecting? Probably going to be a situation we have to consider. Other guys, Lane Riggs, Front Row Motorsports, Bob Jenkins, someone that we are really encouraged to see. Hasn't really had very good luck yet this season, but he's a good driver. We know that the front row car, obviously Zane Smith, led laps here last year. If it wasn't for a penalty, possibly could have won. Good truck. Ty Dillon's truck was absolutely terrible at Las Vegas. You can Google up Ty Dillon and Rackley Motorsports, and you're going to see pictures of them pitting and opening up the hood. Never a good sign. It was rough. Let's hope over the last 2 weeks they've got it fixed. But here's the issue. Rackley had a pretty good season the last 2 years with Matt DiBenedetto, but they also had a pretty good crew chief in Chad Kendrick, who has, I believe, moved up to the Xfinity Series and is doing phenomenal there. New crew chief comes in, Shane Wilson. We all know who Shane Wilson is. Shane Wilson is a long-term veteran, but the reality is with these long-time veteran crew chiefs, like Steve Addington, we know their name from back in the day. Look, Jeff Hammond. But the reality is the game has passed them by. They still have a name. They still have a face. But they're not going to be able to compete with a kid who just got out of, engineering school 4 or 5 years ago. They're not going to be able to compete with a kid who's been working at Hendrick for the last 4 or 5 years and now has been thrust into a crew chief position, or someone that actually knows how to send an email. And the bigger point with Shane Wilson is, yes, we're familiar with him, but we're also, one of the reasons why we're familiar with him is because he's been fired everywhere lately. His run at JGL didn't go well. His run with Fury Speed or whatever didn't go well. His run with Ryan Sieg didn't go well. His run with The various truck teams that he's bounced around with a couple last years haven't gone well. And here we go. First race to Las Vegas. Pop the hood on this baby. That's enough talk about Ty Dillon. And then we got the 75 truck, which is usually pretty solid. We got to see Parker Kligerman in this truck a lot. Stephen Parsons is going to be in it this year. Encouraged to see why that. Matt Mills, Al Neese. I mean, you look and see what they have done this year in terms of driver rating. That's typical Matt Mills. That's typical Neese secondary, tertiary truck. They all appear to be secondary, tertiary so far. Let's look specifically at the Bristol laps to get an idea of who ran. Well, let's look at the optimal lineup first. And in the spreadsheet, you can get all of the race notes that pretty much highlights everything that you need from that race. Despite the penalty, Nick Sanchez still is in the optimal lineup. You got Christian Eckes with a 98.8. Nick Sanchez, 66 fantasy points. Bailey Curry bringing it home because he starts 36th, finishes 13th. Wasn't very cheap, but it's a lot of place differential points. And as we see in the truck series, it's hard to get that a lot of times because the good trucks start up front and they finish up front, and that locks out these place differential opportunities. Bailey Curry is actually able to bring it home. Jake Garcia for McAnally, 30th, finishing 11th. Again, not really cheap. It's a McAnally truck. I'm really surprised to see Curry be as expensive as he was. Taylor Gray bringing it in, not scoring very much. And then Haley Deegan with a 5,500. Not doing much on the board, just 28 fantasy points. Has a typical Haley Deegan day, starting 19th, finishes 17th, stays out of trouble. Not a lot of trouble in this race. I don't expect there to be a lot of trouble. I know we think, oh, it's Bristol, it's crazy. There will be some bumping and some banging, but they slow down a lot in the turns. The bumps and shoves are not as detrimental as sometimes we think that they are. And you can rewatch the race on YouTube and you can see firsthand, like, yeah, they will get into each other a little bit, but you really got to screw up and you really got to force an issue to spin someone out into a wreck. And then, yeah, occasionally that wreck can collect somebody else, but these are pretty underpowered trucks and there should be enough time to react. I don't expect it to be that hairy, so just get out there and turn some laps. Looking at the scoreboard, we can see Eckes. Huge day. Lap traffic at the end cost him. Nick Sanchez gets there because place differential 26. Has to start in the back. I think he had an issue in qualifying, running for the Kyle Busch / Rev Racing. Corey Hine gets you 10 place differential, wins the race. He's too expensive. You can't afford him. Bailey Curry at 7,900, but he gets you 23 place differential. Finishes 13th, a little bit better than his average running position, but Curry's a solid driver, 2 top 15s in the last 2 Bristol races. Carson Quapple not in the player pool. Very solid run for Spire Motorsports. Carson Quapple, I'm not sure if he's going to be in the pool again today. Rooting for him in the late model. Won a race at Southern National last week. I love that track. I love that. I got to go there sometime. It pains me that I lived in North Carolina. I didn't go to a lot of these grassroots tracks, but man, I love that place in iRacing. Several wins at Southern National. Super nerd alert. Grant Enfinger, 10 place differential points. Too expensive. You can't fit him in your lineup, but a good day. Not a bad pick. Jake Garcia does end up in the optimal lineup. Bill McAnally, 7,800. Scoring 52 fantasy points. Rhodes, solid day. Too expensive. Can't fit him in. It's typical DFS day for him. Taylor Gray does work at 8,600, just barely, 47. Carson Hosever, a ho-hum day, 10,600, doesn't lead laps, but he runs up front the entire day. It's just it was Eckes stinking up the show, and then at times stealing the win at the end. Rajah Caruth, very solid day, too expensive. Stuart Friesen, not good. Connor Jones, solid day, 6,300, a bit of a bargain there, 38 fantasy points. Just doesn't ultimately work. A little too expensive to fit in the line if you got to go even cheaper with Haley Deegan. Benedetto, solid day for Rackley. But again, remember, crew chief change. I'm not really excited about this team. 8,400, too much. Parker Kligerman, 8,200, too much. Although it was appealing since he was starting 28th, but he only finishes 18th. So maybe you use that to downgrade. Stephen Parsons a little bit. If Klickerman can't get past 18 in that truck, then what is he going to do? Chase Purdy, solid day, but not on your fantasy board. Crafton, not a good day. Haley Deegan, typical Deegan day, super cheap. She works. Colby Howard rounding out the top 20, not bad. Tyler Ankrum rounding out the top 20. Terrible for who Tyler Ankrum was supposed to be. In retrospect, not really that bad considering Hattori didn't seem to have much left in their trucks. Anyone else worth mentioning? Yes, Zane Smith led or scored 11 laps led points, but has a penalty. Ty Majeski, 5 fast lap points, was running up front, blows a tire under green, has to limp it in. Let's go into the laps of Bristol to give you a more clear picture of what unfolded in this race. So again, you're going to see here's your top 10 in terms of finish. And if we look at top 10 laps, that's where they were all day. Heim, 4th most top 10 laps. Eckes, most. Infinger, 6th. Hosever, with 92% of his laps inside the top 10, 5th most. 72% in the top 5. 2nd most. He was always there. Always bridesmaid, never a bride. Eckes, though, 199 inside the top 5. It was his show. And then it was Heim. Or then it was Hosever, then it was Heim. We'll go to the bottom to show you the other guys running there. But really no surprises here in the top 10. Other than your Nick Sanchez only ran the 12th most laps inside the top 10, but that's because he had to start in the rear. Matt DiBenedetto was there all day. But again, I don't know about these changes at Rackley. Jake Garcia, not very many top 10 laps. Well, he didn't finish inside the top 10, and he also had to start in the back of the field. Carson Quapple started in the teens, stayed in the teens all day. Bailey Curry, same. Stuart Friesen, same. They didn't really knock on the door of the top 10. We go down here too. Ty Majeski. Ty Majeski, as you can see, running up front, running in 3rd place, having a solid race. Not as strong as he was in 2022 where he wins. Here's the crucial moment on lap 106. Blows a tire, limps it around. That's pretty much the end of his race. Game over, pal. Let's look at another one to explain why someone didn't run as well. Zane Smith goes from 5th to 1st by staying out at the beginning of stage 2. Holds it for as long as he can, loses the lead at the end of the stage. Pits, gets a speeding penalty, game over. Thanks for trying. William Sawalich. I will never get that name right. He will be racing this week, so you got to keep your eye on him. He will be with Tricon. He was running as 11th on lap 169. And if you watch the broadcast, you don't get anything information. If you Google it up, you don't get any information. But you can see here during a green flag run, he loses 2 laps. I'm assuming he got a tire going down or a loose wheel or whatever. So he has a poor finish. But he was nearly a top 10 driver. He will be with David Gill in Tricon this week. He has won an ARCA race at Bristol. Put him on your board. I believe he's on the entry list. Dean Thompson, Jack Wood, all get involved in wrecks. Up here, there was another driver that I wanted to mention, Carson Quapple, speeding penalty. So he could have had an even better day. You can see here at the end of stage 2, he's as high as 8th place in that Spire truck. Spire had speed last season. Spire has speed this season. That's good news for Raja Caruth. It's even better news for Kyle Busch. Yikes. Sanchez penalty right there as well. Not as severe. And that pretty much explains it. The guys up front we already talked about. Let's look at Las Vegas. We'll start first with the laps at Las Vegas. Here's our top 10 finishers. We're looking at the laps that they ran inside the top 10. Caruth was there all day. Ankrum was there all day. McAnally had speed. Not only did they have race speed, they had qualifying speed too. Now you look at Tricon and you think that it's possible that they went with a little bit more downforce because across the board, the Tricon cars did not qualify that well. You probably should look at this page first to get a better idea. So this is sorted by finishing position here. And we can see all their stats from the race, from their fantasy points. Caruth didn't actually score the most fantasy points. That would go to Corey Heim, but that's boosted by the fact that he had 22 place differential points. Caruth couldn't score any place differential points. Caruth had more hog points, dominator points, fast laps, /laps led points. Just barely, though. Higher driver rating, but again, that's inflated because Caruth is going to be able to click off more faster laps because he's in cleaner air, whereas Heim had to work through traffic, so it's not a very fair comparison. If you were able to make all things equal, ceteris paribus, that you cannot do, Heim more than likely had the faster race truck, but again, it's not all about race truck. Qualifying matters, and Spire was able to find a balance between getting a little more trim to get that really good qualifying run and not sacrificing too much downforce. Whereas it looked like Tricon probably went a little too much trimmed out. And, that's a big deal to make the truck more racy. They are such big-bodied chassis that punch such a huge hole in the air that they create an insane wake. And these things are basically giant sailboats. It becomes very difficult to pass. We saw that at Las Vegas. Sometimes we get out there and we start turning laps, although at Las Vegas, it is wide enough track that you can, at times, navigate the wake, get your sailboat into a little bit cleaner air, not as dirty air, and make movement forward. Bristol's going to be a lot more tricky. It's just a tighter, smaller track. And I know people say, oh, well, aero shouldn't matter. It does. It still matters. It's still going to matter. If the track were widen out, but it's not. 200 laps in a truck race with stage brakes, you just don't get enough grip on that higher groove that would allow for you to really take advantage of an outside line. Your sailboat is still going to get caught in some wake. You're better off, or at least what will evolve quicker or happen quicker is you're going to run into lap traffic. The opportunity is not necessarily going to be a second groove forms, although it could. The opportunity for passing that's going to present itself a lot sooner is going to be lap traffic. And that's going to be the way around. Timing, negotiating that, having experience in that will help you out. So it does make you worry about doing too much downforce at Bristol. Who cares? We're not setting cars up. Anyway, Gillen didn't have the best qualifying effort, 25, 19, 14. But they will overcome that in the race, obviously, right? With Heim finishing third, fourth, fifth. And yes, I know, bearing the lead. Heim had a bad pit stop. That's what cost him the win. That is true, but take nothing away from Roger Caruth. Very solid win. Very fast truck. We'll get to that in a second. Old McAnally, again, second here with Eckes in speed. I'm a little disappointed. I was expecting him to be the star of the show. It was Rajat Caruth. Decent day. A little disappointed. Very fast in practice. Had the track position. Caruth and that Spire truck were simply better in the story. But we're going to go to Bristol this week, where Eckes was phenomenal last year. Matt Crafton looked okay in practice. Not really great. You're not really inspired by these practice speed numbers. Given what he did last year, he qualified 15th. But then he came out and he ran really well. The average running position was 10th. So that is encouraging to see. We'll see what happens. This is his second year with Jared Prince as his crew chief after having he was a junior joiner for years and years and years. And maybe that was the crew chief change. I think it got Prince halfway through last season, to be honest with you. So that could be something. There might be something there. They might be finally simpatico and hitting it off. Keep your eyes on it. I know that I had dismissed Crafton. I'm not going to dismiss him anymore. Yeah, I don't have to put him in the conversation. Zane Smith running part-time for Bill McAnally. Looked okay. Wasn't really wasn't like Zane Smith full-time. And that was kind of expected. And I believe that's what we'll see moving forward. Grant Enfinger, a decent day, not bad in practice, okay in the race. I don't always expect him to show up with as much speed as the other McAnally trucks. They are allied, like his crew chief Stankiewicz. This could be a week, though, where he shines. We've seen him be really good at short tracks like IRP, good Bristol stats. Ty Majeski, solid day, had an issue if I am not mistaken. Look, 8 fast lap points, 10 laps led. I got to go back and look and see what was Majeski's stupid thing of the week. Was it a speeding penalty? Well, now since I'm thinking about it, I've got to make myself look, right? Because I get really frustrated when I forget what I mess up. What was it got Majeski last week? So Bristol was the tire. I think it was a penalty for Majeski. Yeah, he was speeding, I believe, during the green flag pit cycling. No, we can look it up. Can always look it up. Got the race notes right here. And what was that, lap 103? Number 98, number 2, too fast entering. Number 11 has a long pit stop. Number 13. Yeah, that's it. Number 90. I always get Majeski mixed up and think that he is in the 13 Johnny Sauter truck. And no, he is in the 98, the old Enfinger truck. Sometimes it's so hard to remember all these numbers. And the truck series is the worst because they're constantly changing teams and changing numbers. So, yeah, that's what got Majeski. Go back over here. Look at what these guys did at Vegas. Garcia starts 12th. Going to finish in 11th. Not a bad day. Didn't really show you a lot in practice, but not terrible. We looked at his long run speed, halfway decent. And we know that he was running for Thor. We know that he was pretty good here last year. No worries. Good day for Brett Holmes. This is what we're expecting to see. Sure, we want more from Mike Shiplett. And if I stand corrected, Holmes is allied with Spire. 5,800, 12th place finish. Doesn't show us anything in practice, but that's just going to be a lot of times the story with these smaller teams and smaller trucks. Probably not going to get a lot of laps, especially at an intermediate track. I would expect that Bristol will get a little bit more data just because it's a smaller circuit. Good day, encouraging, makes our research feel right. We thought that he was going to have a pretty good season, and we know that the Atlanta and Daytona don't really tell much. So for him to have a top 15 day, small team at Las Vegas, it's a good sign. Roads, disappointing day. Didn't show anything in practice. That's a worry. We've seen him do that before. But again, a lot of times we don't have to worry about it because Rhodes just has not been a big part of daily fantasy. He rarely wins races. He just gets solid points, stays, wins some championships, but sometimes he presents himself as a good place differential play, but a lot of times he's just priced out of the market. He doesn't really control races. Just never really a DFS factor. Connor Jones running for Thor. Pretty solid day. Gets a top 14, top 15, starting 26th. Young kid. We Googled him up the other day. Late model racer. I think family money somewhere apart. Should be good to go. Kyle Busch, not his best day ever. Sure, it might worry a little bit, but his average running position was 7th. He was fine. It was a Raja Caruth day. Chase Purdy, top 20 for Spire. Not a bad day. Nick Sanchez, I got to see what mistake he made. Stuart Friesen, not very good of a day. Tanner Gray finishing right there in the 20s. Let's see, Mason Massey. Not bad here for Massey. This is what we used to get out of the young trucks, is at 20th place. Finished 20th in DFS. That's encouraging. I got to look up and see what happened to Riggs. Daniel Dye as well. I'm sure I've got it here. It shouldn't take me too long. And let's look at that real quick. Oops. Probably highlighted them, hopefully, to remind myself. So just looking at Busch here. There's the pit cycle. Maybe ran a little long. Maybe a little bit slower of a pit stop. Was inside the top 10 before pit cycling. Fell off a little bit. Chase Purdy kind of rebounded to where he was. I would like to see if this was just a bad pit stop that really killed Kyle Busch. He came in 8th, left around 12th. Most drivers, I mean, look you up here, for example, Christopher Bell's in 7th, pit cycle, comes out round 8, doesn't really lose any spots. Kyle Busch comes in round 8th, comes out around 20th. So a bad pit stop here probably killed him. I have to look specifically at it, but top 10 day, really nothing phenomenal. But I'm not worried. Bristol coming up. It's Bristol, and it's Kyle Busch. Nick Sanchez, I'm pretty sure it was a speeding penalty here on 105. Let me look that up. Let's just look who got penalties. Number 2 and number 98 pit from top 10. And so, yeah, Sanchez and Majeski too fast entering. The number 7 gets a safety violation. And the other penalties here, the number 18, number 11 have long pit stops. Or no, number 11, that's Corey Hines, that long pit stop. 15, commitment line violation. So a lot of stupid mistakes there for those drivers that kills them. So yeah, Sanchez gets a penalty right there. Riggs, I believe, gets a penalty, and that kills his day. Right? Let me double check that. Yeah, that was Riggs got a penalty, Busch got a penalty, Sanchez got a penalty, and I believe Tanner Gray got a penalty. All of those drivers were having a little bit better days. Put them on your board this week. Now we will close out by looking at actual times and get a good picture of the speeds. Again, all of this is available in the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet. You may not like looking at Bristol and Las Vegas, and that's fine. You can pick the data points that you want to choose. I don't mind. The way that these engines, Ilmore engines run, and the way that these chassis are set up, I don't mind comparing Bristol. Look, it's not perfect. I would love to have something better to look at. 5, 6, 7 intermediate track races at least. But this is what we got. And I'm looking at it. So right now I can see their starting position. I also have them ranked based on their finishing position. And I can see the guys and the teams mainly that ran well. Obviously, Spire wins. McAnally and the McAnally Ally Roebuck truck put 4 in the top 10. And we got Heim, Taylor Gray, and Christopher Bell all right here. So there's your 3 big dog teams. And then Thor Sport, kind of the afterthought, but we do have to put an asterisk on that, being that Ty Majeski had that penalty. Maybe he could have put some better speeds out there. But Jake Garcia and Rhodes were just okay. Connor Jones was good for him, but just okay. Stacey Holmes, I mean, that's going to be allied with Spire. Disappointing finishes here, but these would have been top 10. I don't know if Purdy would have been, but Sanchez allied with Spire, Busch, Inspire could have been top 10 trucks. So when we look at the field going into Bristol, this may be one of the most evenly matched. I mean, this is about 20 trucks right here. And there's even some good ones down here that just had issues, right? Tanner Gray, not great, but Tanner Gray's typically a 15th to 20th place truck. It's fine, whatever. Lane Riggs, may not be there yet. I would say this front row truck is a 15th place truck at the moment. By the end of the season, it's going to be clearly in the top 10 with him. It was there at Las Vegas. They just had that penalty. Daniel Dye as well. I didn't go into it. Daniel Dye had an issue. I think he had a penalty. Here you can see lap 100, loses a bunch of spots. There it is. I believe he has a loose wheel or something go down. He's running inside the top 10 and has an unscheduled pit stop. So Daniel Dye was fast. Don't sleep on Daniel Dye. I was not very big on Daniel Dye. Daniel Dye has not been in the greatest equipment over the last couple of years. Now he is. Now he's with Bill McAnally. And in the first real opportunity to show his speed, there it is. 20 laps left, he's in the top 10. Then an unscheduled pit stop. Most people haven't made it this far in the podcast. They've already tuned out. Most people, you can Google search. They aren't going to find this information on Daniel Dye more than likely. And so they're just going to look at box scores and say, oh, same old Daniel Dye. This could be a place to get a little bit of leverage because he ran well. Now, as I was saying, in terms of truck series, we've got 20 trucks that are good. I do not remember the playing field ever being this even. We lost Kyle Busch Motorsports, but ultimately that's a good thing. We don't have one powerhouse team thumping people. We have 4 really good teams with pretty good stables of drivers and crew chiefs. And it's anyone's race any weekend. And it's anyone's race coming down to any amount of laps. And things can change at the very end. Raja Cruz wins because he was close enough. He was able to capitalize on mistakes. And that's, you look last year, Eckes. Heim beat Eckes. He's the one that was the thief because the field is that equal. Now, obviously, 20th through 36th leaves a lot up to the imagination, a little bit to be desired, but you can't have everything. And to be quite honest, 20th through 36 is a lot better than it used to be. Norm Benning, out of here, straight to jail. Rayum Motorsports, see ya. J. Joe Cobb, love you, but we don't need you anymore. The trucks in the back are better. But in comparison to the front, they're still slugs. But they're not terrible. You'd love to see Rackley get a little bit better, but I don't have high hopes. This was a terrible truck at Las Vegas. Hopefully they fix it. You'd like to see Dean Thompson start doing something. And he will be, but he's more going to be the back of the top 20 guy. Timmy Hill will have his days. Matt Mills may have a day or two. We want to see Bailey Curry do something, but we didn't see him do much in the race. We can look at his actual speeds and see what's kind of going on there. I don't know if this AM truck, Siswinski, is going to get many resources or funding. You got Rayum as the crew chief for him. Lawless Allen, not terrible of a performance for that's your typical Lawless Allen performance, but it's pretty good for Rayum Racing. And it does seem like Rayum has brought in some resources and some members and brought in Lawless Allen, and they're going to be a little bit better. 23rd place finish, that's really not bad. It's really good for Rayum. He beat a lot of trucks. He beat all the guys in the back, in the mid-pack. We don't even should call it mid-pack. This is backpack. This is backpack in the law. And we have a mid-pack and a backpack in the Xfinity series. We don't have a mid-pack, really, in the truck series. And that's a good thing. We have the top 20, then we got the backpack. And in the backpack, Massey was your winner, which is good. The Young is moving forward. I was worried that Young Motorsports might be devoting too many of their resources to the Xfinity series because that program looks really good. But hey, Massey and Young ran well like the old days with Dipple and I've forgotten all the different drivers for that 2-car. Been a bunch of them. Even Boyd was halfway decent at times. So, Mills was with Young. It's encouraging. There's no reason why Rackley shouldn't be competing in this backpack. I know they had a bad race. We'll see. I am burying them a little too early. Probably shouldn't be throwing dirt on their grave or dancing on the grave. All right. Let's look at some of these speeds. Actually, I want to start at the bottom. Isn't that crazy? I want to see the speed of Bailey Curry. I thought he would be faster. What was his average lap time in this race? And we're going to run it so that we don't take any like the outlier lap times. I believe I'm setting the cut line at like 36 minutes. So if you run slower than a 36-minute lap, 36-second lap, I'm not going to calculate that. His average lap time was 32.1. It's 23rd. That's not terrible. So he finished a lot worse than what his speed suggested. 23rd in speed, Las Vegas. That's not bad. So I'm a little encouraged to roster Bailey Curry at Bristol, especially given that he does have top 15s. How was his teammate Matt Mills in terms of speed? 32.4, 27. So the Nice trucks are running about the same lap times. Not quite the best of the backpacks. We look up the Lawless Allen. Allen 32.2, so it was technically slower. Just, I guess, played the race better. Was able to maintain that lead lap. I don't know if it was a pit road sequencing or an issue during the race. But technically, those trucks were a little bit faster. Mason Massey, 32.4. But again, able to hang on to the laps a little bit better. You'd have to look in the actual specifics of the race to find out what really held Mills and Curry down. They must have had some really bad laps at some point. Let's go and look at their actual laps. I cannot believe we're sitting here looking at. I can. People are like, what do you mean you can't believe you're looking at the laps of Bailey Curry and Matt Mills? Look in the mirror, dude. You're right. So probably, yeah, there is an issue early in the race for Bailey Curry. Let me see if I've got that in the notes. So that's going to explain your Curry situation. That's right. He spun early in the race, if I remember correctly. 41 spins off of turn 2. There it was. Yeah. So that's what sealed Curry's fate. So then he's probably down a set of tires. And, that's actually really encouraging for him to possibly have been down a set of tires, having to run longer than everyone else, and to still be really technically the fastest among the backpackers. So if we look at Curry, spins, back in, maybe taking it easy on tires here, running her down. So that was basically his race. That'll explain why his finish wasn't very good. Again, taking it easy probably on tires. In the back of the field, laps and laps and laps down, not really pushing it. And for him to not be pushing it very much and to run as well as, these are pretty good lap times. When he actually gets to race at the end, has tires, he's running 31.5s. And, that's comparable to around 10th to 15th, folks. But you would only see that if you actually go into the data and look at the picture. Curry didn't get the finish. But once you put it into proper context and you see when he was actually racing, truck had plenty of speed. It was a top 20, and he would have been the best of the backpackers. He would have been better than Lawless Allen. He spun early in the race. Teammate Matt Mills out here just churning laps. Race is over. He's already laps down. Did he ever have any speed? So when he still was a viable option in the race, he was running 31.9, 31.8, which still are slower than Lawless Allen. They're slower than Ty Dillon. Obviously slower than what we said from Bailey Curry. Better than Boyd, which we're not expecting for anything from that small team. Thompson had his issues. Hill was already out of the race. Mason, Massey, he was slower. Massey has a bit of a slowdown here, but looks like he had a little bit more speed. Not really encouraged by the laps that Matt Mills is running. Halfway decent, though, right here. Looking pretty good. But I guess he just kind of got out of the race. Truck may have gotten away from him a little bit, but decent speed here at the beginning. Pretty good. I mean, very comparable to all of these guys. But that's early. And later on, he's not really showing much, right? We get later in the race, decent speed again. Where is he running position-wise here around lap 51? So let's give Matt Mills a chance here before we rule him out. Run 20th, hanging there in the back end of the top 20. And then what happens to him on lap 75? Then looks like the show is over in that niece truck. Lap 75. 42 gets into the wall. That'll do it. All right, so that's a little encouraging for Curry too. Or Curry and Mills may have had a little bit of speed in those niece trucks. They may have had top 20 days. One spins, one gets into the wall. I think I'm going to have to put both of them on my radar this week. And I think you should too. Unless people are really diving into the stats, what they're going to do is say, oh, Matt Mills didn't score any points, average position of 25, finished 31st, same old Matt Mills. That does not tell the real picture. And I am glad to have that leverage. Let people fade Matt Mills. I was fading Matt Mills at Las Vegas, complete honest. Didn't believe the truck had any speed. Afterwards, take my victory lap. I knew it. Yeah, that wasn't very good analysis on my part. He had speed. I missed that. He got into the wall. I got lucky. Bailey Curry, all average running position of 30th, finished 28th. These niche trucks are not what they used to be. Wrong. It was a top 20 truck. He spun at the very beginning of the race. Never got to demonstrate his speed. Later in the race, when he's out there on fresh tires, really just turning some laps, put down some pretty good times. Same thing with Daniel Dye. Maybe they'll be hip to the 17th average running position. But remember, he was in the top 10 and then had an unscheduled pit stop. More leverage. Something to think about. Can Ty Dillon turn it around this week? I don't know. Dean Thompson. Can you ever trust Dean Thompson? Let's go back and look at some of the lap times at the top. All right, we got the start. We got their finishing position. We've got them ranked based on finishing position. We've got their average running position. And we've got their average lap time, excluding lap times that are greater than 36 seconds. And then we've ranked them. Clearly, the drivers that were in the top 10 all day finished in the top 10 for the most part. We had our exceptions like Nick Sanchez, and Friesen was close, but he didn't finish that top 10. Kyle Busch with the penalty late in the race. Nick Sanchez with the penalty late in the race. For the most part, if you're in the top 10, you finished in the top 10 as long as you didn't make a mistake. And 3 of them didn't start very close and still made their way up and still recorded some pretty fast lap times. You know, one of the things I point out, the unfair comparison is Rajah Caruth is 3rd fastest when we look at average lap times at 31.5, but he had an unfair advantage in that he started first and got to run more clean air laps. Heim technically was the fastest with the 31.4, and he had to start in traffic. So even though we can't make things equal, the fact that he had to deal with more traffic and still was faster means that Heim was faster. That's okay because there's a lot more to racing than just having the fastest laps. There's many things that happen. You've got to pit better. But from a daily fantasy perspective and trying to predict fast trucks, you got to be encouraged, especially since Heim won this race last year. Although he did steal it, but you have to be in second to steal a race, and second's pretty fast last time I checked. Taylor Gray continues to grow as a driver, top 5 speed. Tricon continues to grow. They are not KBM Toyotas yet, but they are flexing their muscle. You want to see them qualify a little bit better, but maybe not from the daily fantasy perspective. Christopher Bell jumps in the seat, fresh, and no problem whatsoever, 6th fastest. This worries me a little bit. Eckes' lap times were not great. He was fast in practice, He started on the front row, and the speed just wasn't there. Tyler Ankrum had more speed. Fifth. Now, we're talking tenths of a second, maybe even hundredths of a second. So we really don't want to inflate this too much. Because, I mean, you can see the differences between a 31.4 and a 31.7. End of the day, this is a truck series. These are Elmore engines. You're not going to see a large disparity. And even outside of the top 10, it's not that much. But again, it goes back to that point. When you've got Tanner Gray finishing 20th, he's running 31.8. Look at his final laps from 124 to 133, 31.6, 31.5, 31.4, 31.5. This top 20 is good. They are even. I mean, I don't trust Chase Purdy ever. Just because he got that Bama buggy sponsor, he continues to get rides. And he was 19th with a 31.9. But that's not very far off, right? It's 2/10 behind. Now, obviously, 2/10 every lap adds up quite quickly. But for Chase Purdy, he's, I don't think he's a lap leader yet. He's not a consistent top 10 driver, but he's going to be 15th to 10th a lot this year. And that says a lot for Chase Purdy, and maybe even inside the top 10. Anyone's disappointing. It's Stuart Friesen, who was a championship contender in 2019, and is really just kind of fallen back. This small team needs to find some sort of alliance, get things going. Speaking more to the speed of Al Neese, there's Connor Mosack inside the top 20. That's probably where Bailey Curry would have been, and Matt Mills not too far behind. We're not going to see a Ross Chastain Neese type thing. We probably won't see a Carson Hocevar Neese type run. But instead of like we had a primary car, a secondary car, and tertiary cars, it's quite possible that they're all secondary cars, kind of in the grand scheme of things. They're all right there around the 20s, sort of, years ago where we had Young had multiple cars and two of them could be around 20th every week. That's probably where we're going to see the Neese trucks. But again, back to the point. Yeah, there is a little bit of a divide between the top 10 and the top 20, but it's not much. And I mean, you had Busch was fast. It was just a penalty. And a penalty and track position could be all that changes. Maybe you give Ben Rhodes track position and he goes from a 31.9 to a 31.7. It's very believable. Majeski was the second fastest. Speeding penalty gets him at the end of the race. Majeski won in 2022, had the issues at Bristol in 2023. So although Thor doesn't really tear up the board, they could have. It's a completely different picture. I mean, if Majeski doesn't have that issue, maybe he wins the race. He's at the top of the board. Matt Crafton is a bit of a surprise. Jake Garcia transitioning to this team, that's not bad to be 11th. Pretty strong showings. I think I've gotten enough into the truck race. Hopefully you enjoyed this. As always, racefortheprize.com. That's where you get access to the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet. $27 for March. If you're disappointed that you didn't get Phoenix and you want to talk pro rating, sure, send me an email, racefortheprize06@gmail.com. DM Race for the Prize on Twitter. Blessed to have you guys around. Like, subscribe, share. Love you guys. Trip the Light's fantastic.